Thanks for joining us, folks, for this Fast Blast Towards a Poor College. I'm going to turn it over to Matt Cheney.
Thank you, Martha. Welcome, everyone. I'm Matt Cheney, and I wanted to talk to you today about a provocation. I am going to offer lots of questions and zero answers drawn from 4 different books, 2 of which the authors will be coming to talk with us at the collab soon, and the information on that will be at the end of this. So I've been thinking about priorities in our current situation for higher education. And I have been coming back to a series of books, some of which I've known for a long time and some of which are relatively new to me. But I want to start first with the most provocative idea, which is the idea of moving toward and embracing the concept of being a poor college. So this comes from, well, let's start with some basic assumptions first. Poor and rich are polemical descriptions. They're not meant to be evaluations. I'm not saying poor is good and rich is bad, or rich is good and poor is bad, but rather a description of the situation that we are currently in. Now, we also know very well that the majority of American students attend schools that are not super wealthy. These are schools without expensive facilities, schools that don't have tons of rich donors giving them millions and millions of dollars every year. These are schools that survive primarily on tuition money. So, of course, it would be nice to be rich. It's nice to have lots of resources and be able to do whatever you want. However, I feel like we are lost if our only argument is we should be rich. The assumption that the best schools also are the rich schools has really shaped our disciplines and molded our job expectations and warped our sense of possibilities. So I want to move away from that assumption that, again, that rich equals good. So what might we learn then if we embrace the idea of the poor college? So I'm going to start from the Polish theorist and director and teacher Jerzy Grotowski, who in 1968 published the English translation of a collection of essays and interviews called Towards a Poor Theaters. This is where my title comes from. Grotowski wanted theater artists to get to the core of what makes theater and what theater can do that nothing else can do. It bothered him tremendously to see places with lots of resources essentially turning theater into staged movies or amusement park rides. So he said what he was seeking was whatever was most distinctively theater, what separated theater from other types of performance or spectacle, and to emphasize that and to gravitate toward that. And so in his theater lab, he said that by eliminating all the stuff that was not necessary for theater, they got to thinking about what is actually essential. And he said that theater cannot exist without the actor-spectator relationship of perceptual, direct, live communion. That was the sine qua non, the thing you can't live without for theater. Now I want to go back to 1938 and Virginia Woolf, who came up with the idea of embracing the affordances of the poor college. So in her book-length essay, 3 Guineas, which is about how to give a donation of 3 guineas. A guinea is an antiquated form of money in the UK at the time. It would have been 1 guinea would be a perfectly respectable donation to an organization. And so her conceit in this book is how will I spend these 3 guineas I have to give money to organizations that will help prevent war. And one of the ideas was to give money to women's colleges, because women's colleges in England at the time were terribly underfunded and not prestigious. They had only existed for a matter of decades rather than centuries, like the men's colleges. And so there was a clear need for money from the women's colleges, even if they were at very famous, prestigious places such as Cambridge or Oxford. And so Woolf started pulling away from this idea that what women's colleges needed were to be equally as rich as men's colleges. She thought there were some possibilities that the low prestige and the low money of the women's colleges might offer them. And so she said that if you were going to rebuild the colleges, let them be rebuilt on the qualities that made them distinct currently because of their poverty. She said, let these new colleges be built on lines of their own. It must be built not of carved stone and stained glass, but of some cheap, easily combustible material which does not hoard dust and perpetrate traditions. So the opportunity of poverty was the opportunity of experiment and adventure in Woolf's mind. She said the poor college must teach only the arts that can be taught cheaply and practiced by poor people, such as medicine, which is an interesting inclusion there. I'm not sure we would think of medicine today as something that can be taught cheaply and practiced by poor people. But anyway, she said, such as medicine, mathematics, music, painting, and literature, it should teach the arts of human intercourse, the art of understanding other people's lives and minds, and the little arts of talk, of dress, of cookery that are allied with them. The aim of the new college, the cheap college, should be not to segregate and specialize, but to combine. It should explore the ways in which mind and body can be made to cooperate and discover what new combinations make good wholes in human life. And that was something I really wanted to hold on to here, is the idea of discovering what can make good wholes in human life. So now to jump ahead to contemporary times, Matt Brim's 2020 book, Poor Queer Studies, is probably my favorite academic book of the last 5 or 6 years. In it, he explores the idea of how underfunded universities and students and faculty who work at them, students who attend them, can contribute to disciplines that are, by their very nature, supported by and created by people at rich colleges. So he takes queer studies, the field of queer studies, as his case study, but really his ideas can apply to really any discipline. But he shows how queer studies grew through wealthy universities, how its most famous proponents and theorists and writers and activists are all the products of, in fact, rich universities. One clear example he uses is Eve Kosofsky Sedgwick, who is one of the founders of queer studies and who is often celebrated as somebody who used her writing to create her world. But her world was the world of Yale and Harvard and Duke. And this affected what she was able to see as the subject matter for her discipline. So Brim asks, what if queer studies had grown up through places like where he teaches, the College of Staten Island, or for our own purposes, Plymouth State University? What would happen if the questions of materiality that we face became the questions of materiality for our disciplines? Said, what would that do to our disciplines? So he said, how could rethinking the work of queer studies in the context of students' relative material need and race-gendered precarity, academics' professional liminality, and underclass institutional identity inform and potentially enrich the field, its pedagogies and theories, and the academy beyond it? And I hold on to this idea of informing and potentially enriching the field. How can our circumstances do that? Finally, Danica Savonick's new book, Open Admissions, is really wonderful for us because she looks at how 4 quite famous writers, Toni Cade Bambara, June Jordan, Audre Lorde, and Adrienne Rich, what they learned in their work as teachers in the remedial writing program of the City University of New York in the late 1960s and early 1970s, when the CUNY system created the open admissions program that guaranteed admission to any graduate from New York City high schools. And then created the remedial programs to try to support that. And within those programs, some of these remarkable writers, some of the most important writers in America in the 20th century were teachers. And so Danica Savonick has gone back and looked at their teaching materials and really dug into the archives to see how this experience of teaching in a very underfunded program designed to serve some of the least served students in New York City, how their experiences there shaped their teaching and their writing. So she came to this, and this is what first actually grabbed my attention. She came to this after having attended the Free University of New York City, which is part of Occupy Wall Street, and having worked as part of that in 2012. And she said in her experience, these free universities boiled learning down to its essence, just teachers, students, a schedule, and a hand-drawn map. Notably absent were expensive textbooks, fancy equipment, grades, and of course, tuition. With no set curriculum, courses reflected topics that were important to us and that we imagined would be interesting and useful to others too. Many of these courses, and these are course titles, The Carceral State, 1930s Labor Movements, Jews, the Bronx and Whiteness, Agrarian Struggles in Latin America, and Hydrofracking and Why It Matters, addressed the material conditions in which our lives were unfolding. Others, like workshops on yoga and puppetry, dating in NYC, and fermenting dissent, sauerkraut and quick pickling, aimed to expand participants' capacities to experience joy and love more fully in the world. And it's that last part that I've really grabbed onto, is what within our pedagogies, within our poor colleges, can help us bring ourselves and our students toward the experience of joy and love more fully in this world. And she shows, again, how this approach fits with that of the writers she's writing about when they were at CUNY and working within the open admissions program and the remedial writing program there. So to leave you, I want to give 3 takeaways. First, to ask, what is distinctive to a school? What is the essence of a college? What can any college, rich or poor, do that only a college can do? I think that we have unique institutions here, but we often try to make them into something that they are not, much like theater, as Grotowski would say. So what is really essential to education? What then are our material conditions, and how can those material conditions inform and potentially enrich our fields, as Matt Brim argues? How can they inform and enrich our fields, our pedagogies, our understanding of education? And then, as Savonick asks, where are pleasure, joy, and love within our work? And how do non-essential things bring us away from pleasure, joy, and love? So what is necessary and essential to our ability to expand our capacities to experience these things, to be more fully in the world, to be more whole? For Woolf, it ended up at a certain point, she said, just burn it all down, quite literally. She said, take this guinea and with it burn the college to the ground, set fire to the old hypocrisies, let the light of the burning building scare the nightingales and incarnadine the willows, and let the daughters of educated men dance round the fire and heap armful upon armful of dead leaves upon the flames, and let their mothers lean from the upper windows and cry, let it blaze, for we have done with this education. I hope we aren't quite done with this education and that it continues onward. And I look forward to talking about these ideas and others with Danica Savonick and Matt Brim on March 26th from 3:30 to 5 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. I am dropping into the chat the link to register for that. We have recorded this session and we'll be posting it on the CoLab's website. I can't think of a topic that feels more timely right at this moment. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a good as you can have day.
Thank you all.